This is a big moment, so let's get right into it. Today we're going to be taking a look at the recently released update to the Sue Gray report, what it means for Johnson, and what happened in the most exciting evening in the House of Commons we've seen for a long time.
Because he is a man without shame.
They didn't think the rules applied to number 10.
He must no resign. Does the Prime Minister think I'm a fool? And I have to tell him he no longer enjoys my support.
If you want to be updated on stories like this as they happen, then keep yourself in the loop by following TLDR on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for TLDR News. So, as you're probably aware, for the past few weeks, all of Westminster has been breathlessly awaiting the much-anticipated Sue Gray report. The report was expected to be released last week, but as we've explained in this video, the police threw a spanner in the works on Friday by announcing that they were opening their own investigation into number 10 gatherings and requested that Gray make, quote, minimal reference to those gatherings that were being investigated by the police. This left Gray with essentially two options. Either she could release an abridged version of the report with only minimal reference to those gatherings being investigated by the police, or she could wait until the police investigation was finished, which might take months, and then release her findings in full. After taking the weekend to make up her mind, Gray apparently decided to go for the second option. On Monday, Gray gave number 10 an update on her investigation, which was published at about 2:30 p.m. on the same day. In it, Gray went to great pains to stress that this, quote, update wasn't anything like the full report. It was just a brief update and some general findings. This was largely because police are currently investigating 12 of the 16 gatherings in the Gray report. So, if Gray wanted to release a full report, she would only have been able to properly discuss 4 of the 16 parties under investigation, which Gray apparently felt she wasn't able to do without, quote, detriment to the overall balance of the findings. In Gray's own words, as a result of the Metropolitan Police's investigations, I am extremely limited in what I can say about those events, and it is not possible at present to provide a meaningful report. Anyway, you get the point. Gray's update isn't intended as a full-on report, and it only includes some general findings. We'll get onto those general findings in a second, but before we do, it's worth saying that the fact that the police are investigating 12 separate events, including an alleged party at Boris Johnson's Downing Street flat on November the 13th, is pretty bad news for the government, not least because Johnson flatly denied that any such event happened in the House of Commons. It also means that the chances of Johnson or any member of number 10 being issued a fixed penalty notice are now quite high, especially given that Scotland Yard have apparently been given more than 300 photographs as part of their Partygate probe. Anyway, on to the general findings. As we mentioned earlier, the report did not go through any events blow by blow, nor give much indication whether she thought that any individual event broke the rules. In essence, Gray points to large structural problems that have allowed Partygate to actually happen. Firstly, she points out that there were failures of leadership and that simply events shouldn't have been allowed to go ahead. She also states that there needs to be a robust policy in place to try and counter the excessive consumption of alcohol at work. She goes on to suggest that the garden of number 10 and number 11 should be primarily for the Prime Minister and that official access to the space should be controlled. These concerns about workplace policies aren't the only thing that Gray spoke about. She also went on to point out that there should be an easier way for staff to call out colleagues at work. In essence, she claims that there were occasions when staff members felt they couldn't report poor conduct, presumably in this context because staff members felt they couldn't speak out about the rule-breaking parties. Finally, Gray points out that number 10 has expanded significantly in recent years, and that despite this expansion, the structures of number 10 haven't developed at the same pace. Basically, number 10 is just not entirely fit for purpose anymore. This is something that Johnson addressed first at his 3:30 statement to the House. The statement was supposed to be relatively routine, but quickly got very exciting. Johnson first apologised for how the whole matter had been handled, and then said that in accordance with the Sue Gray report, he would be rearranging the number 10 office while waiting for the conclusion of the police investigation.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would like to make a statement. But firstly, I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. And it's no use saying that this or that was within the rules, and it's no use saying that people were working hard. This pandemic was hard for everyone. This is a moment when we must look at ourselves in the mirror and we must learn. And while the Metropolitan Police must yet complete their investigation, and that means there are no details of specific events in Sue Gray's report, I, of course, accept Sue Gray's general findings in full. That is why we are making changes now to the way Downing Street and the Cabinet Office run, so that we can get on with the job that I was elected to do, Mr. Speaker, and the job that this government was elected to do.
Starmer then stood up and gave a speech asking Johnson to resign, arguing that this is no longer a party political matter and appealing to Conservative backbenchers in front of him.
The Prime Minister repeatedly assured the House that the guidance was followed and the rules were followed. But we now know that 12 cases have reached the threshold for criminal investigation, including the party on the 20th of May 2020, which we know the Prime Minister attended, and the party on the 13th of November 2020 in the Prime Minister's flat. There can be no doubt that the Prime Minister himself is now subject to criminal investigation. Over the last 2 years, the British public have been asked to make the most heart-wrenching sacrifices. A collective trauma. Our national story about COVID is one of a people that stood up when they were tested. But that will be forever tainted by the behaviour of this Conservative Prime Minister. Rather than come clean, every step of the way, he's insulted the public's intelligence. And now he's finally fallen back on his usual excuse. It's everybody's fault but his. And just as he has done throughout his life, he's damaged everyone and everything around him along the way. His colleagues have spent weeks defending the indefensible, touring the TV studios, parroting his absurd denials, degrading themselves and their offices. Whatever your politics, whichever party you vote for, honesty and decency matters. Our great democracy depends on it. And cherishing and nurturing British democracy is what it means to be patriotic. It is only they that can end this farce. The eyes of the country are upon them. They will be judged by the decisions they take now.
Unsurprisingly, Johnson refused Starmer's request and attacked Starmer's backing of Corbyn's plans to scrap NATO and for failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. We should say here that Starmer was not the reviewing lawyer for the Jimmy Savile case and actually commissioned an official investigation into the case. That's not a party political defence of Starmer. Johnson's statement just isn't quite true. Johnson was then followed by former Prime Minister Theresa May, who asked whether Johnson didn't understand the rules or believed that they didn't apply to him.
What the Gray report does show is that Number 10 Downing Street was not observing the regulations they had imposed on members of the public. So either my right honourable friend had not read the rules, or didn't understand what they meant, and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to Number 10. Which was it?
May was then followed by leader of the SNP Ian Blackford, who demanded the Prime Minister resign and then accused him of misleading the House, which, at least according to the ministerial code, would be a resigning matter. Blackford was apparently referring to Johnson's performance at Prime Minister's Questions on December the 8th, where he implied that no party had taken place on December the 18th, 2020.
I have been repeatedly assured that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken, and that is what I have been repeatedly assured.
Anyway, the Speaker asked Blackford to withdraw his accusation, but Blackford refused and was eventually kicked out of the House.
Public know this is a man they can no longer trust. He has been investigated by the police. He misled the House. He must now resign.
Order. You'll have to withdraw that last comment.
Mr. Speaker, I gave the evidence of the 8th of December.
Order. You're going to have to withdraw misled.
It's not my fault if the Prime Minister can't be trusted to tell the truth.
Under the power given to me by Standing Order number 43, I order the honourable member to withdraw immediately from the House.
This was a bit of a theme. Labour MP Chris Bryant referred to Johnson's claims on December the 1st that all guidance were observed, and on November the 13th that the guidance and the rules were followed at all times, and asked him to correct the record. Again, Johnson refused. The other recurring question was whether Johnson would publish the report in full. Both Labour and Conservative MPs asked Johnson about this, and both times he conspicuously refused to commit to publishing the full report. So what happens now? Well, Conservative MPs were pretty cutting in their questions, and it's likely that more have now sent in letters of no confidence to the 1922 committee. As always, no one knows quite how many letters are already in, but chances of a no confidence vote have definitely grown.
I recall attending my grandmother's funeral. I didn't hug my siblings, I didn't hug my parents, I gave a eulogy, and then afterwards I didn't even go to her house for a cup of tea. Does the Prime Minister think I'm a fool?
Ever since he joined the party's candidates list 30 years ago, he has enjoyed my full-throated support. But I'm deeply concerned by these events, by some of the things he has said from that dispatch box. When he kindly invited me to see him 10 days ago, I told him that I thought he should think very carefully about what was now in the best interests of our country and of the Conservative Party. And I have to tell him he no longer enjoys my support.
If you want to be kept up to date with that and everything else in this story, then be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram for minute-by-minute updates and explainers which never make it to YouTube. You can follow all the TLDR accounts by searching for TLDR News and follow whichever countries you're interested in. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible, and if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can sign up by clicking the link below.